morning, I'm Pauline Verzosa. It is Friday, the 15th of May, and we're bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. And now first in the agenda, Senator Ronald Bato Dela Rosa is seeking help from the Philippine National Police, asking to be placed under its custody. Now that comes a day after the tense gunfire incident inside the Senate. Here's the report.
Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano confirmed that Senator Bato Dela Rosa was no longer inside the Senate following the gunfire incident inside the chamber. According to Cayetano, Dela Rosa's wife told him that the senator took the opportunity to leave the Senate compound. He clarified that Dela Rosa did not leave while gunfire was erupting, but in the early hours of the morning after the situation inside the Senate had calmed down.
Story short, kinonfirm ng Sergeant at Arms 2:30, the communication center reported to the Sergeant at Arms that Senator Bato together with Senator Padilla had left the Senate premises. Upon receiving the report, the Sergeant at Arms with Sec Mendoza proceeded to verify.
Cayetano also said there was nothing wrong with Dela Rosa leaving the Senate. He said his fellow senator was not a fugitive, before reports of gunfire echoed through the Senate. News broke that the Supreme Court had ordered all parties to comment first on Dela Rosa's petition for a temporary restraining order to prevent his possible arrest under a warrant issued by the International Criminal Court. In other words, the High Court had not issued a TRO. Cayetano also maintained there was no obstruction of justice since no arrest warrant had been served on them against Dela Rosa. But where is he now? According to Senate Sergeant at Arms Mau Aplaska, Dela Rosa spoke with PNP Chief Melencio Nartates Jr. He said Dela Rosa asked to be placed under police custody.
Si Senator Bato po, magbiro, di ba kilala natin lahat, but the way I sense it, parang merong serious na pagsasabi at merong kasamang pag-alala sa kanyang seguridad.
General, paano pagkakasabi niya? Paano yung pagkakadeliver niya nung inalok niya?
Hindi ko lang ano yung exact word, pero sabi niya, gusto mo, Chief, doon lang ako magpa-custody sa PNP.
But according to Aplaska, Nartates made no commitment. Meanwhile, data from the Bureau of Immigration shows no record of Dela Rosa leaving the country.
Meanwhile, an NBI agent claimed that Senate Sergeant at Arms Mau Aplaska was the first to open fire during Wednesday's shooting incident at the Senate. The details from News 5's Gio Robles.
Kasama natin yung mga ahente ng NBI.
Around 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday, May 14, NBI personnel entered this part of the ground floor of the GSIS building after hearing clanking and drilling sounds. NBI agents found these men boring through a door, which we later found out to be a passageway to the Senate premises. As it turned out, these men were workers hired by the GSIS management. Then, multiple gunshots rang in the air. At this time, we were still in the GSIS building with NBI agents and workers. No idea at all where the noise was coming from. Eventually, it became clearer where the shots emanated.
Ayan. Ayan, ayan. Base po sa mga ahente natin sa NBI, galing po sa ground floor ng Senate itong sunod-sunod na putok ng baril na naririnig po natin.
Somehow, the NBI agents finally realized they were the targets, but they could not determine the source of the bullets. After a few more minutes passed, we caught sight of other NBI agents also deployed around the GSIS building. One of them said it was Senate Sergeant at Arms Mau Aplaska who fired the first shot.
Pumutok ng tatlo pa atras. Problem ako. Sana kayo sir, di ba? Sa utility kanta. Sa kantin. Oo, dito sila lumabas sa kayan. Yung pintuan ng kay Garda.
According to the agent, he and his companions were in the bridgeway in the second floor of the GSIS building. It was Aplaska who just emerged from a door from the Senate, suddenly opened fire and right at him. The embattled agent had no choice but to retaliate in self-defense.
Siya na una, nakamahaba siya,
Fortunately, no one in the side of the building was hurt. For News 5, Gio Robles, we are One News.
Now, that gunfire incident has triggered allegations of a possible diversion linked to Senator Dela Rosa's departure from the chamber, which officials and lawmakers are now disputing and investigating. Here's our report.
Was Wednesday's Senate gunfire incident a deliberate distraction to facilitate the so-called escape of Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa? Former Senator Antonio Trillanes believes so.
I believe it was staged. Sinigurado nila na mapakapture ng media yung mga pangyayari na yun. So, ginawa nila yan to sow chaos para makakuha sila ng simpatya sa publiko at lumakas yung posisyon nila sa Korte Suprema.
Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano has confirmed that De La Rosa is no longer at the Senate building, saying the senator left the premises for everyone's safety. Meanwhile, Akbayan Party List National President Rafael David criticized Cayetano's leadership for allowing such an incident to unfold.
Para sa amin, the blame falls squarely on the Senate leadership o under Alan Peter Cayetano. Imagine, 3 araw pa lang po siya. Hindi lang po naging shootout yung Senado and naging katatawanan nga nung nagkaroon pa ng habulan nung Monday. Para sa amin, klaro po that the Senate leadership is complicit sa obstruction of justice. At hindi lang po obstruction of justice, aiding and abetting na po yan, tinulungan na po niya yung tumatakbo sa panawagan ng katarungan.
For its part, the NBI said its investigation will also cover whether the shooting incident and Senator De La Rosa's departure from the Senate building are connected. NBI Director Melvin Matibag added that they are coordinating closely with the Philippine National Police to determine the full circumstances surrounding the incident.
Kung merong pagtingin yung ibang mga kababayan natin na mukhang stage ang commotion na ginawa para palabasin si Senator Bato, meron po ba kayong ganong naulinigan?
Well, I will be very honest, Yusek Claire, no? That's the sentiment of our NBI agents kasi nandoon kami. So isa na po sa aming tinitingnan yon. Kaya naman po, doon sa ibang mga katanungan tungkol doon, ang sinasabi ko lang, we will always defer to the judgment of the Department of Justice dahil sila po yung primerong ahensya na namumuno po rito.
Cayetano has insisted that the shooting incident was an actual attack and not a diversionary tactic.
Kung tututukan kita ng baril, papasukin ko bahay mo na may baril ako. Nag-warning shot ka, pinutukan kita pabalik. Is it not an attack? Sorry but I don't think there's any question. The Senate is under attack. Was under attack. Napakagaling ko naman mag-orchestrate ng lahat na yan. Kaya kong papuntahin dito mga armadong grupo.
Meantime, Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano claims that some lawmakers are challenging his newly installed leadership in the Senate. Cayetano said efforts are underway to persuade members of the majority bloc to switch sides in an alleged coup attempt. He claimed members of the minority are reaching out to some senators as part of the move, which he said he had expected. He also alleged that some lawmakers have been receiving invitations to talk as well as intimidation amid the reported push. Cayetano assumed the chamber's top position only this Monday.
Medyo busy sila ngayon na trinatry kausapin yung mga miyembro namin na sumali ulit sa kanila. May invitations to talk, may pananakot, but dati na silang takot eh. So,
But your 13 is solid. But your 13 is solid.
You're always solid until you're not.
Now, don't go away. We will be back with more stories right after this break. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You are still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano said the chamber could convene as an impeachment court on May 18 or at at the earliest possible date. Cayetano said there is no reason to delay the impeachment trial against Vice President Sara Duterte, especially since the articles of impeachment are already in the Senate's possession. Once convened, Cayetano said the Senate will issue summonses and set the calendar for the impeachment trial. All right, and now let's talk more about the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte with political scientist Cleve Arguelles. Good morning, Cleve, and thank you for joining us here on Morning Matters.
Good morning, Pauline, and thank you for having me.
All right, now before we go into the impeachment issue, we wanted to get your reaction to the shooting incident that happened at the Senate last Wednesday.
Well, we're learning more and more, right? It's been 2 days after, and we're learning more and more that there are a lot of inconsistencies in what the Senate claims to be what happened during that evening, right? It appears that although they claim that they've been under attack by NBI agents, that story is not really holding up when you look at the facts being offered by other law enforcement agencies, including the NBI and the PNP. But also, if you look at some of the stories that were published by by other journalists, it appears that again, the story being sold by the Senate, specifically Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano, isn't really holding up.
Well, Cleve, there are a lot of speculations because there is still no clear and verified information until now. There are speculations that it was all just a ruse. It was staged to allow Senator Bato de la Rosa to, quote-unquote, escape the Senate premises. What is your take on that?
I'm inclined to believe that this is something that is just staged, or if not, at the very least, that they have exploited the new Senate majority, that they have exploited the situation to the advantage of the advantage of Senator Bato de la Rosa to ensure that he can escape from being served the ICC arrest warrant, right? And this is what disappoints a lot of our kababayans, because this is a new law for the Philippine Senate. As our recent history would show, previous incumbent senators who needed to face justice because they have been served warrants of arrest, they have, they voluntarily surrendered, right, and submitted themselves to the rule of law and to due process. And this is not something that Senator Bato de la Rosa is willing to do, and he is being protected by his colleagues in the Senate. This is just not only disappointing, but I think this really betrays also the Senate as an institution that should promote the rule of law.
And with that said, Cleve, I mean, how do you think the public will now see the Senate as an institution? How will this affect also their reputation because of this incident?
Yeah, Pauline, when the framers of our constitution, when the authors of our constitution, when they talk about the Senate, we are reminded that the Senate is a very important institution in our country's politics, right? We elect them nationally. There are only 24 senators, and the only other officials that we elect nationally are our presidents and vice presidents. So this is actually the training ground for supposedly leaders who can really think of the nation, right? Especially when they're contrasted with the House of Representatives. That representatives usually just think of their districts, right? Local concerns, what's good for their own partisan interests, if not their own regional interests. So, but what the Senate is showing us now is that they're actually incapable of delivering this precise mission, that this intention that they should go beyond partisan interests, go beyond regionalistic concerns, and really think of the nation. This is not what we're seeing with whether it's this staged shooting incident or the leadership coup last Monday in relation to the upcoming impeachment trial of the vice president. So so it does really this is really a fall from grace. I think it's tragic to see our Senate this way.
This week has been very, very eventful, to say the least. It started with that leadership shakeup at the Senate last Monday. But Cleve, I wanted to ask you, how secure do you think is Senator Alan Peter Cayetano's hold on the Senate presidency? And what are your thoughts on another potential coup at the Senate?
Yeah, I think it's a very it's a very fragile majority, given that it would only take one vote, one less vote. They are 13 now, right? It would only take one less vote to actually successfully declare all of the positions in the Senate leadership vacant. But the challenge is that to be able to install a new president, you need at least another 13 votes, right? And this is, I think, a situation that Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano can take advantage of, right? Because even if Bato is not around, even if one of his allies is not around to give him 13 votes again, as long as the minority could not muster enough votes, right? At least 13 votes to install a new Senate president, then he stays, right? I also find it a bit weird that Senator Cayetano is complaining about a potential coup against his leadership, but because this is precisely what he also did last Monday, right? And given the things, given how things are going in the Senate, right? This questionable shooting incident, how the Senate leadership handled it, how Senator Bato de la Rosa was allowed to escape the Senate premises, right, despite being under supposedly the protective custody of the institution. I think there are good reasons why his colleagues might be considering replacing him as Senate president.
Well, you did describe the majority as fragile as of now, Cleve, but where do you think the swing votes could potentially come from if there were to be another Senate leadership shakeup?
Well, if you look at the Senate leadership, the Senate majority, I think there are more or less two big camps in that majority, right? One would be you would really come to describe as really strong Duterte allies, right? You have Senator Bongo, Senator Bato de la Rosa, Senator Robin Padilla, to a certain extent, Senator Amy Marcos as well, and of course, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano. And then the other camp would be those who are in this majority out of being in the same circumstance with them, and that circumstance is that they are potentially subjects of cases, legal cases, right? For prosecution cases for other crimes, right? For example, we have senators who expect to be serve warrants as well, if not to be subjected in investigation regarding their involvement in flood control corruption scandals, for example. That's Senator Jinggoy Estrada for one, Senator Joel Villanueva, and to a certain extent, the former Senate President Chis Escudero as well. I think the swing votes might come from this camp, specifically people like the Villar siblings, Mark and Mark and Camille Villar, or even Senator Lauren Legarda herself, because I think among within this particular camp, they have they're among those who expect kind of like least issues when it comes to legal battles against the Marcos administration, right? Senator Lauren Legarda, I think we would just imagine that she's probably considering how the administration is treating her son, but I think that's something that could be overcome, right? And that's also the same for the Villar siblings. There are attempts to investigate their families' businesses, right? But I don't think it's as grave as the efforts to prosecute, for example, the other senators.
Well, I guess at the end of the day, it's still all about political survival. But now, Cleve, let's talk about the impeachment. Do you think Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano is complying with the constitutional requirement of forthwith when he says that the Senate will convene as an impeachment court on Monday, May 18?
if they do convene on Monday and we don't see any attempt to defer the process any further, then I would say that that's really what the Constitution intended, right? This is what forthwith means, and we're happy to see that the Senate President changed his mind on what forthwith means, right? Because previously, in the previous impeachment, supposedly impeachment trial, right? He claims to have a very different definition for forthwith as compared to the rest of us, right? But now he says that forthwith means immediately, right? To conduct the impeachment trial immediately, and that's a welcome development.
But are you anticipating any possible hiccups or delays that may arise again in the impeachment trial now of Vice President Sara Duterte and Cleve? Would you say that there is more pressure now on the Senate because of what happened to the earlier impeachment of VP Sara last year?
Yeah, I am of the opinion that the leadership coup last Monday, installing a new Senate president, having a new Senate majority, that this has something to do with the impeachment trial of the vice president as well, right? I think that one of the observations of the Duterte camp, but also of the broader public in the House hearings prior to the House plenary vote is that the exposure, the prolonged exposure of the public to the evidence against VP Sara in the House Justice Committee hearings, I think that was damaging to her reputation, to her popularity, especially that those evidence allegations remain unanswered, right? So I could imagine that they will try their best to avoid the same scenario in the impeachment trial, especially that if it will take weeks, if not months, right, of talking about the same evidence, talking to the same to the same witnesses, right, and this is going to be a highly publicized impeachment trial. I don't see it. I don't see it going in the way or in favor of the vice president, right? There must be a reason that they, Senator Bato had to return out of hiding, and that they had to go all these troubles just to install a new Senate leadership. They must be thinking of doing something, right, to compromise what we would expect should be a free and fair impeachment trial.
And Cleve, what are your thoughts on the House prosecution team? It is made up of veteran litigators, former prosecutors, and even senior lawmakers led by Congresswoman Jervy Luistro. What are your thoughts on the composition, and do you think they're in for an uphill battle once trial begins at the Senate?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the House is sending its best to the impeachment trial, and that's only as expected, right? Especially if they expect that the impeachment court might be composed by key Duterte allies, right? That they should really be able to make sure, right, that they will be able to present their case to the impeachment court as good as and as excellent as possible. We are also reminded, right, that it's not only that the impeachment case is not only legal in nature, right? It is also a political case. It is also convincing the public and talking to our fellow Filipinos that an impeachable official, in this case, the vice president, no longer remains fit, right, to occupy that specific public office, right? So it will really take a lot of skills, a lot of convincing, right, and making sure that they have a good strategy to convince not only the impeachment court, the senator judges, but also the broader public.
Now let's go to the defense. Well, the burden is on Vice President Sara Duterte to dispel all these allegations being hurled at her. Now, are you seeing, Cleve, any possible justifications, explanations on the part of the defense that could actually counter the evidence that we already know how strong it is?
Yeah, I would expect that they would, of course, come up with a good defense, and that would be the job that should really be done by the vice president's counsel. We have seen informal attempts to to respond to the evidence presented to the House Justice Committee hearing. Informal in the sense that the Vice President hasn't really participated formally in that particular hearing. So the trial is also an opportunity for us to first hear from the Vice President herself, directly from the counsel of the Vice President, on how they will respond to the evidence being offered in the impeachment hearings, right? I think that they're likely to question how these bank transactions were documented, right? The accuracy of these bank transactions, and how they are being tied to these specific bank transactions, right? So it's going to be this very technical questions on whether the bank transactions that is claimed to be of the Vice Presidents and the husband, right? Whether this is accurate, whether this actually reflects the movement of the money in their bank accounts, for instance, right? We should also expect an attempt to water down the COA report, right, on the misuse of the confidential and intelligence funds, right? We've seen a preview of this in the first impeachment process, in the first impeachment proceedings, right? For example, offering that there are actually names such as Mary Grace Piatos that exist somewhere in Davao City that are actual beneficiaries. So I think they would continue this kind of like defense.
All right, and finally, Cleve, tell us your fearless forecast when all is said and done. What do you think this impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte will ultimately come down to? Is it a conviction, an acquittal, or possibly even her resignation before a vote is made to avoid the consequences of an impeachment?
Right. I think that the pathway to conviction is really very hard. It's really difficult given the numbers, given the sizable number of strong Duterte allies in what would turn out to be the impeachment court, right, in the Senate. But hopefully that we'll be able to see an impartial, a free and fair trial conducted by these senator judges. At this point, we just want the trial to convene because it's their constitutional obligation. We are worried that the first impeachment proceedings might happen again, right? That there might be some delays, if not total deferral. So I think that's really the focus now. And during the trial, for sure, we will all be watching closely how they will treat the evidence, whether whether they will allow the public to also appreciate the evidence presented by the House, right? So it's really a concern now about the process and the integrity of that process.
All right. Well, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning and for sharing all your insights. That was political scientist Cleve Arguelles. Thanks, Cleve.
Thank you, and good morning again.
Do stay tuned. Morning Matters. We'll be back after this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm Pauline Verzosa, and here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and we give you the context behind the headlines. As earlier reported, Senator Bato Dela Rosa is said to have asked to be placed under the custody of the Philippine National Police. Senate Sergeant-at-Arms Mau Aplasca said he overheard the request during De La Rosa's meeting with PNP Chief Melencio Nartates Jr. and Interior Secretary John Vic Remulla. De La Rosa left the Senate early Thursday, hours after the gunfire incident inside the chamber. His whereabouts remain unknown until now, with no immigration record showing he has left the country. The senator is wanted by the International Criminal Court over alleged crimes against humanity linked to the Duterte drug war. Now weighing in on the developments in the Senate, we have Attorney Michael Yusinko, a senior research fellow at the Ateneo Policy Center. Attorney, welcome back to Morning Matters.
Good morning, Pauline, and good morning to all your listeners and viewers.
All right, first of all, Attorney, what do you think of the gunfire incident in the Senate and what will its impact be on the image of the Senate as an institution?
Well, that's a tough question to answer. The incident itself, given the circumstances, really is it will tarnish the institution. But I think more than that, it will strengthen the distrust of the public with the current Senate leadership. No? Yung mga namumuno ngayon at namumuno nung panahon nung insidenteng yun. Talagang mas maraming tao magdududa sa kanila at yung mga taong nagdududa na ay mas lalong lalalim yung pagdududa sa kanila. No? So sa palagay ko yun yung I think that's the more critical impact of what happened. No? That the public is really now questioning whether can we still trust? Can we still rely on the senators? Can we still rely on the Senate to perform its constitutional duties?
Well, Attorney, we also have Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano insisting that until there is a local court order for the arrest of Senator Dela Rosa, then there was nothing unlawful about him leaving the Senate premises. Now, from a legal standpoint, is there basis for that kind of argument? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, of course. No, that's a legal opinion. No? That's a valid legal opinion, which obviously I don't share. But still, and everybody is free to express their legal opinion, no, about this particular issue. But that's not the point. The point is, the Senate as an institution has no authority to prevent law enforcers from serving a arrest warrant. Well, kasi hodang ICC warrant yon or local warrant. The Senate has no authority under the Constitution. Kahit basahin mo pa yung Constitution from front page to the last page, wala kang mahahanap na nagsasabi doon that the Senate can prevent or stop the service of or the execution of an arrest warrant when parliamentary immunity is not applicable. No? Wala yan sa jurisprudence, wala yan. In fact, wala rin yan sa rules ng Senado mismo. So, whatever the status of the warrant is irrelevant from the perspective of the Senate. Yun yung punto na maling nangyari, maling ginawa ng Senado is that they exceeded their authority when they prevented the execution of the warrant in the Senate.
But as we know, Attorney, Senator Bato de la Rosa is no longer inside the Senate premises. He left around 2:30 a.m. on Thursday and reportedly along with Senator Robin Padilla. Given nga po na there is a standing ICC arrest warrant against Senator Bato, could individuals who are assisting him, aiding him, potentially face obstruction of justice?
Absolutely. No, I just don't know what the penalty for obstruction of justice is. But if it is beyond 6 years, then the senators who aided the escape or the disappearance of someone or the subject of a warrant of arrest can be held liable for obstruction of justice, as those employees or officers of the Senate who acted in their behalf. No? So, yung pagtulong nila o yung pag-maneuver nila or pag-orchestrate nila ng pagtakas ni Senator Bato, that can be the subject of a criminal charge of obstruction of justice.
Okay, but Attorney, last Wednesday, the Supreme Court notably did not issue a TRO in its resolution. Instead, it directed both parties, both the respondents and Senator Bato de la Rosa, to submit their comments within 72 hours about the petition. What does the absence of a TRO signify at this stage? And walk us through the process habang nag-aantay po ng komento ang Supreme Court. Can the arrest warrant against Senator Bato de la Rosa still be enforced?
That's a good question. So there are two ways of looking at it. So the first one is, kung dahil walang TRO, walang injunction, that means the arrest warrant can be executed, can be served. No?
Okay.
Kumbaga, hindi pinipigilan ng korte, then pwedeng gawin. No? Which is what the NBI was trying to do, or what the PNP was trying to do. Now, the second way of looking at that is, okay, wala tayong TRO, tapos medyo volatile yung situation, maybe it's better to just wait for the decision of the Supreme Court. Anyway, yung timetable naman, hindi naman mahaba, no? Kasi yung mga deadline is short and strict, no? Nung nandun na si Senator Bato sa loob ng Senado, that option was actually viable, no? From the perspective of the NBI. Kasi anyway, alam na nila kung nasan si Senator Bato. So pwede na nila munang hintayin yung desisyon ng Korte Suprema, tapos kapag nag-decide na yung Korte Suprema, they can serve the warrant. Kasi alam na nila kung nasan siya. He's in the Senate, no? So that second approach was prudent and viable sa palagay ko. So those are the two ways that you could sort of approach the fact na hindi nag-issue ng TRO yung Supreme Court. One is you can execute it no matter what. Or two, you can say na hintayin na lang natin, no? Anyway, alam na natin kung nasan siya, tas para wala nang kaguluhan, pabayaan na muna natin. Let's just hold off for a while and kumbaga let things calm down para maayos natin yung pag-serve ng warrant.
So malinaw, attorney, there is no legal impediment for the executive to enforce this arrest warrant on Senator Bato. But considering that the senator's whereabouts remain unknown already, as of now, can he legally be considered a fugitive from justice at this point?
He is technically now a fugitive kasi wala na siya eh. Tumakas na siya eh. Right? Iba siguro kung nandun pa rin siya sa Senado. Yung ini-explain kong scenario, yung second scenario sa'yo. Kung nandun siya sa Senado, nandun lang siya, then pwede natin sabihin na hindi siya fugitive kasi nasa kustodiya siya ng Senado. Alam naman ng law enforcement na kung nasan siya. But because he escaped and disappeared, then technically he is now a fugitive from justice, no? Kasi meron siyang pending warrant, hindi siya mahanap, wala siya sa kustodiya ng kahit anong public official or government agency, then technically he fits the definition of a fugitive from justice.
Pero attorney, until when can the government delay or wait to act on a valid ICC arrest warrant? And does the executive even have the prerogative, the discretion on whether or not to surrender Senator Bato to a foreign court?
Your question has two parts. So yung first part is, can they wait, no? Can they, or how long can they wait? Kung nandun sana si Senator Bato sa Senado, they could have probably waited until the Supreme Court rendered the decision. But now that he has escaped and can't be found, they have to serve the warrant now at all costs, diba? Kailangan nilang talagang haligungurin yung buong Pilipinas para mahuli siya. Wala na yung option na sinasabi kong maghintay tayo. Wala na yun kasi tumakas eh. So kailangan nilang hanapin at hulihin si Senator Bato. The second part of your question is, does the government have any discretion not to serve the warrant? Well, yes, in the sense that if they don't serve the warrant, then they have to file the cases in the Philippines against Senator Bato. Right? Kasi kung hindi siya kakasuhan ng crimes against humanity sa bansa natin, then that means yung ICC case will stand, di ba? Ganun lang naman yun eh. It's either in the ICC or in our courts. Di ba? Yun din naman ang sinasabi ni Senator Bato, di ba, na kasuhan siya sa korte natin. So, if the Marcos administration decides not to serve the warrant for some reason, then they have to file the charges in our courts and then, of course, arrest Senator Bato and detain him in our jails. But if they don't choose that, which they can, obviously, then they have to arrest Senator Bato and then deliver him to the ICC for the case there.
Attorney, balikan ko lang yung question on how long can the government, the executive branch, actually delay the serving of this arrest warrant? Kasi we already know, apparently, this ICC warrant was already given as early as November last year. So it's been about 6 months already and hindi pa rin po nasa-serve itong arrest warrant. They only tried to do it when Senator Bato resurfaced at the Senate on Monday. So for months parang hindi po tayo sigurado if the executive even tried to really serve this arrest warrant. And now that Senator Bato has gone into hiding again, ano po yung mangyayari? Is there anything that the ICC can do or may sanctions po ba yan? Anong magiging implication if we do not surrender Senator Bato to the ICC?
I don't know about sanctions that can be imposed by ICC. No? So that question is better answered by international law experts and also those who are involved in the ICC. But to answer your question directly, wala nang delay. Hindi na pwedeng delay. Kumbaga, the moment na nakawala ulit si Senator Bato, that already triggered the urgency that the government must have in executing the arrest warrant. Now, may sanctions man o wala, from our perspective as Filipinos, dapat ang iniisip natin, kung hindi ma-serve yung warrant, then ano yan? Kahinaan ng Marcos administration yan. Right? So that's a sanction also, di ba? A social or public sanction against the Marcos administration if they continue to fail to execute this arrest warrant.
So now, let's go to the perspective of Senator Bato Dela Rosa, attorney. What is the best move for him at this point? Are there still legal remedies available to him?
Last na yung sa Supreme Court, no. That's his final legal remedy, at least sa Pilipinas. So yung kapalaran niya is now tied to the decision of the Supreme Court. So kumbaga ang best case scenario sa kanya, of course, is to coordinate with the NBI, maybe through the efforts of the Senate leadership ulit, if that's going to work. No? Once the Supreme Court renders a decision, then that's it for him. No? Wala na siyang ibang legal remedies.
But what do you think also, attorney, is the most logical move for Senator Bato now? Is it prudent and would it be for the benefit of everyone if he just surrenders himself to the ICC?
Well, it will certainly spare his friends and family from the anguish, no, and the anxiety. Kasi right now, siguro ang pinaka nasasaktan ngayon yung kapamilya niya at mga kaibigan niya, no? Kasi si Senator Bato, of course, his background, sanay siya doon sa ganung klaseng buhay, no? Yung you're always on the run and you're always hiding, right? Pero I can just imagine the toll that has on his family, knowing some of his family members are also part of government, di ba? So that can be causing them serious anxieties and anguish then. So he has to take that into consideration, no, na yung life on the run might be acceptable to him or tenable for him, but for his family, for his immediate family and his friends, that might, that might be causing them more harm than good.
All right, Attorney, well, once both parties submit their comments as ordered by the Supreme Court, what are the possible scenarios that could follow? Kayo po, ano po yung inyong inaasahan?
So there are two possible scenarios. Obviously, kapag sinabi ng Korte Suprema the warrant is valid under our laws, then the government must execute that warrant. No? But if the Supreme Court says no, the warrant is not valid under our laws, then the DOJ must pursue the criminal charges in our courts. So either way, yung Marcos administration is on the dock, as they say, no? Hindi pwedeng patulog-tulog lang sa pansitan ang Marcos administration dito.
All right, well, we're going to leave that there for now. Thank you very much for sharing your insights with us this morning. That was Attorney Michael Yusinko, Senior Research Fellow at the Ateneo Policy Center. Thank you, Attorney.
Maraming salamat din.
Now, in other news, former Senator Dick Gordon said Senator Bato de la Rosa should face the case against him before the International Criminal Court instead of avoiding it. In an interview with The Big Story, Gordon said De La Rosa would have the opportunity to defend himself in court. He added that the Senate majority must explain its alleged protection of De La Rosa. Gordon also pointed out that the ongoing noise inside the Senate is distracting the public from the real issues surrounding the impeachment process against Vice President Sara Duterte.
So the articles of impeachment has been delivered. And obviously, this is a complete distraction on the people's need to focus on what is happening so they can understand the process of impeachment. And certainly, when these things happen, distracted ang tao, tuloy yan, bago nangyari, ang daming distractions, di ba? Kaya bigla dumating si Bato. Kaya magsusuntukan allegedly si Kiko Pangilinan at saka si Robin Padilla. Ang daming noises and obviously a lot of and the principal noise was when they allegedly had that attack and that shooting incident on the system. How can that happen? You know, you have so many policemen outside, you have so many USAAs who are, doing overtime work, and how can he escape very, very quietly, walk to a car, and go out where there are no guards at the garage of the Senate? Were there no guards in the fire exits or in the stairways? Hindi ko maintindihan paano makakatakas siya. So there's a lot to be explained by the Sergeant of Arms, who, by the way, as you know, is a classmate of Bato. So obviously, hindi mo maalis na ma-diminish rin yung trust and confidence ng tao sa Senado kung paano nangyari makatakas ang si Bato dyan. And remember, it's not a simple offense. Bato is being accused of killing a lot of Filipinos, being behind the killing of many Filipinos, like President Duterte. And we should not just focus on escape. We should focus on rearresting him because it's important that we have closure on all these crimes that were perpetrated.
Now, don't go away. We still have more matters to discuss after this break. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You are still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Now, hot weather continues, but many homes remain without electricity due to a rotational brownout in parts of Luzon and the Visayas. The National Grid Corporation of the Philippines said the power outage was caused by thin supply in the grid. For its part, Meralco implemented rotational power interruptions or manual load dropping in affected parts of its franchise area. The power distributor assured it remains alert for possible further interruptions if supply stays insufficient. As of 6 a.m., the NGCP has not yet raised any alert status over the grids. And the Philippine peso slid to a fresh record low against the US dollar on Thursday, closing at 61 pesos and 64 centavos. This breaks the previous all-time low of 61 pesos and 56 centavos recorded on April 29. And during trading, the local currency opened at 61 pesos and 35 centavos and briefly strengthened to 61.33. Now, from a viral internet moment to a must-try meal, Gordon Ramsay's Idiot Sandwich pop-up has officially arrived in Manila's BGC, serving bold flavors, celebrity buzz, and a playful twist on comfort food. Mobile journalist Daniel Dayo reports.
Manila just got served as Gordon Ramsay's bold and indulgent sandwiches just landed here in BGC.
From a viral internet moment to a real-life comfort food experience, the first ever Idiot Sandwich pop-up gives Filipinos a first taste of Gordon's latest culinary concept, blending a more playful and laid-back side of the world-renowned chef's brand, and celebrity guests were quick to join the hype.
Very excited. They're making my sandwich now. Matitikman ko na din. We're very happy because this will be the first idiot sandwich in the whole world. Hope they could come and check this out.
Ever since I was a kid, I was watching Gordon Ramsay with my dad. He was a big fan. So I'm just super excited to be here and to experience the idiot sandwich today.
The menu serves a mix of both flavor and comfort food favorites. From the Turkey Breakfast Club, Pastrami Sandwich Classic, ham and cheese toasty, to the chocolate peanut butter whoopie ice cream for dessert. Even content creators can't help but gush over the selection.
I saw a couple of options. We have sandwiches that are in between croissant, ice cream sandwiches for dessert. And I'm also looking forward to actually that one. The fish no chips burger or sandwich.
That'll be the pastrami sandwich. I'm so excited about it because everything that I like actually from a sandwich, I'm not yet done on the selection. So I'll tell you later.
With the Philippines as one of the chef's biggest following bases, directors highlight that Manila felt like the perfect place to bring the concept to life.
The Filipinos love eating, and secondly, they love eating good food. And we have lovely 5 sandwiches with 1 dessert on the menu. The best is the fish with no chips. It stays the classic, and it's always really one very good fish that we use. We use the local fish, lapu-lapu.
The pop-up will operate daily starting May 15 to August 16, making it a limited-time culinary experience that Filipino foodies shouldn't miss.
But for now, we have it here for 3 months. It's a pop-up. And let's see where the road takes us in BGC. Yeah, you definitely have to come and try it. It's really the best sandwiches that I ever had. I'm not being biased, but it's really super good.
Kapatid Mobile Journal Daniel Dayaw, we are One News.
And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you just the right start to your morning. Let's make the day matter. I'm Pauline Verzosa. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time.